Hello, this is cjhoyle, and welcome to the first episode in my Eastern Ontario bike tour series. This trip begins on Saturday, August 31st, 2019 in the City of Brockville, and over the next 9 days I'll be riding a loop which passes through Cornwall, Ottawa, Pembroke, and Gananoque. To put things in perspective, this map shows the bike tour that I did in May of 2019, so on this trip I'll essentially be picking up where I left off by going further east and further north. On this tour I'll be riding my linear limo recumbent bike, which is loaded with 2 waterproof panniers and a small tent and sleeping pad. So on this first day of the trip I'll be starting in Brockville and riding north away from the St. Lawrence River. I'll be passing through many small farming communities and eventually reaching Burritts Rapids on the Rideau River, where I'll be camping tonight. From there I'll also ride to visit the community of Merickville, where I'll stop to have my dinner. So today is Saturday, August 31st, 2019, and I'm beginning my ride here in Brockville at 10 a.m. Originally named Elizabethtown, Brockville was first settled in 1784 by American refugees who fled following the Revolutionary War. By 1832 the population had grown to larger than 1,000, and Brockville became Ontario's first incorporated self-governing town, which was 2 years ahead of Toronto. 187 years later, Brockville currently has a population of approximately 22,000. Being that today is the Saturday of the Labor Day long weekend, Brockville is presently hosting their annual Tall Ships Festival, and the city is busier than usual. After riding east along King Street, I turned left and started making my way north. Back in the winter of 2011, I spent 4 months living in Brockville during a university co-op work term. The house where I lived was up near the northwest corner of the city, and this road I'm riding on now was actually part of my daily bike commute to work back in those days. More than 7 years later, today was my first time biking through Brockville since then. After crossing over Highway 401, I turned right, and I'm now getting to enjoy riding on some really nice quiet country roads. The sky's almost completely blue right now, and this is exactly the type of weather that I look forward to on these bike trips. Beyond the city limits of Brockville, I briefly passed through the township of Elizabethtown-Kittley before entering Augusta Township. Both of these townships are located within the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. The current temperature is about 19 degrees Celsius. The field over on my right appears to have been growing winter wheat, but it was likely harvested about a month ago. Built in 1833, this first building on the left is an old one-room schoolhouse. The second historic building that I passed was the Algonquin United Church, which dates back to 1858. Both of those buildings are located within a small hamlet known as Algonquin. I've traveled about 20 kilometers so far, and a few kilometers back I made a brief stop to stretch my muscles and also take out my portable AM/FM radio. I always find that on the first day of a tour like this, the kilometers seem to accumulate really slowly, so it's nice to have something to listen to help pass the time. After riding through Roebuck, I'm now on a gravel road called Forsyth Road. This road is leading me through Limerick Forest. This area was originally settled by Irish immigrants in the 1840s, but much of the land proved to be unsuitable agriculturally. Starting in the 1940s, the land was transformed back into a forest, and presently this forest spans a total of 58 square kilometers, or 14,000 acres. It seems to be a popular spot for people to come and visit to experience the great outdoors, including this large group riding their noisy four-wheelers. So after a short period of riding through Augusta Township, I've now crossed into the municipality of North Grenville. While I was riding, I spotted some wild grapes growing along the side of the road. Even the ripest grapes on the vine tasted quite sour, and of course they're full of seeds. Eventually the gravel road I was riding on turned to asphalt, and I rode through the small community of East Oxford. On a trip like this, I do a lot of research and planning ahead of time to choose a route which maximizes my time spent riding on quiet paved roads like this one. This small bridge up ahead crosses over the Kempville Creek. The Kempville Creek is a right tributary of the Rideau River, and I'll be riding back across it again tomorrow morning during my ride through the community of Kempville. I believe these large birds which are circling overhead are buzzards. Also notice all the big white puffy clouds, which now fill the sky, which had been completely blue when I started my ride this morning. The crop growing in the field on my right is corn, which seems to be a fairly dominant crop in this region along with soybeans. These train tracks up ahead are for the Canadian Pacific Railway line. I know I must be getting close to my destination when I start seeing signs for Burritts Rapids on the side of the road. On my previous bike tours, I'm accustomed to staying at campgrounds along the way, such as provincial parks. However, tonight I'm going to try something different, which is to camp at one of the lock stations on the Rideau Canal. First opening in 1832, the Rideau Canal connects together the cities of Kingston and Ottawa. Burritts Rapids is home to Lock 17 on this canal, and I arrived here at around 2 p.m. Directly across the street from here is the Lock 17 Bistro, where I headed for a late lunch. By this point I was already feeling quite hungry, but I waited to have my lunch here since none of the communities that I passed through earlier today had restaurants available. From the menu I ordered their chicken club with tomato soup, both of which were delicious and very filling. After lunch I headed back over to the lock station to watch the lock operating. As this boat was approaching from upstream, the lock staff raised the water in the lock by closing the drain valve and opening the fill valve. Once the level in the lock was equal to the upstream water level, the lock staff could open the gates to allow the boat to enter Lock 17. Just like when it was first built 189 years ago, this lock is still completely manually operated with no use of electricity. Lock 17 is situated on the Rideau River, and it will lower this boat by a height of 2.7 meters, allowing it to bypass the rapids for which this community was named after. Although the canal is now primarily used for pleasure craft boaters, it played a very important role as a busy commercial artery back in the 1800s. In addition to being used for carrying heavy goods, it also carried tens of thousands of new immigrants heading westward into Upper Canada during this period. With the boat we saw earlier secured inside the lock, here you can see the water exiting the lock through the drain valve, thereby gradually lowering the boat down to the lower level. Once the water level has been equalized, the lower gates can open and the boat can proceed further downstream on the Rideau River. After the staff were finished with this boat, I visited the lock station office and purchased a camping permit for tonight. Camping is allowed at almost every lock on the canal, and the price was only $4.90, which is less than 1/8 of the price I would have paid at a provincial park. After setting up my tent, I decided to go for a walk to explore the community of Burritts Rapids. The lock station where I'm camping is located here, but the historic community is primarily situated on the island, which was formed when the canal was built. This land was first settled in 1783 by Stephen Burritts and his family. An early sawmill was built on the river which sparked the formation of the community, and when the Rideau Canal was built, the growth accelerated. This is the Burritts Rapids swing bridge, which was built in 1897 and can be swung out of the way of the canal by a manual mechanism operated by the lock staff. Over towards the west end of the island, this is the dam which restricts the flow of water through the natural path of the river, thereby forcing water to flow through the canal to where the lock is. The water power from this river is ultimately what built the community of Burritts Rapids. I walked all the way to the far west tip of the island, and I can see a boat coming from upstream. When I got back to the lock station, I met another group who were also setting up to camp here. They had started at Lock 24 Kilmarnock this morning and canoed downstream to here. Since I had eaten a fairly late lunch, I didn't start to get hungry until later in the evening, but at around 6:45 I got back on my bike and started making my way to Merickville. I rode across the swing bridge and passed through the community of Burritts Rapids once again. At its peak of prosperity, Burritts Rapids had a bakery, 2 churches, 2 schools, 2 hotels, 2 general stores, 2 shoe shops, 3 blacksmith shops, and 3 wagon shops. I rode along the main street and then continued across the other bridge, which took me over to the north side of the Rideau River. Over on this side is the Christ Church of Burritts Rapids, which, believe it or not, is 188 years old. The Rideau River forms the northern boundary of North Grenville, so after crossing the bridge I'm now technically riding within the city of Ottawa, which spans a massive area of land. However, my time in Ottawa was very short-lived, as I've now reached its western boundary and entered Lanark County. The most direct route to get to Merickville would have been to stay on the south side of the Rideau, but since there are nice roads which follow both sides of the river, I decided to take this road to get there, and I'll take the other one to get back. First settled in 1794 by William Merrick, Merickville is home to locks 21, 22, and 23 on the Rideau Canal. The original motivation to build the canal was to provide a secondary means of transportation to Upper Canada in the event that the United States attempted to invade the St. Lawrence. Blockhouses like this one from 1832 were built at some of the lock stations to help protect against attacks. Merickville has a lot of other really nice, well-preserved historic buildings, and I enjoyed riding around and exploring as the sun was beginning to set. In 1998, Merickville was amalgamated with the former township of Wolford. The village of Merickville-Wolford has a current population of about 3,000. The time is now about 7:30, and I decided it was time to find a place to have dinner. I ended up deciding on a place called the Goose and Gridiron. Even though it's actually already quite late, I'm still feeling pretty full from my late lunch, so I decided to just try some fish tacos from the appetizer menu. After my meal, it was completely dark outside, and the temperature had dropped down to 10 degrees Celsius, so I'm glad to have some bright lights and a jacket to wear for my ride back to the campsite. When I got back, I headed across the street to the Lock 17 Bistro, which has a coin-operated shower that I was able to use, before getting ready to sleep in my tent after an excellent first day of riding. So including my visit to Marrickville this evening, I rode my bike a total of 89 kilometers today. Stay tuned for the second episode in my Eastern Ontario bike tour series, where tomorrow I'll be riding east to Mille Roche Campground, situated on the Long Sault Parkway, which is located just outside the city of Cornwall. I hope you enjoyed joining me for day number 1 of my trip. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.